Hey everybody, so we are at it again. We have Brother Antoine with us. He was not able to be on with us earlier, so he's going to come on and talk about his books and kind of his craft right now. So I'm really excited. So if you are still up and want to kind of join us, you can come on and watch, and you can always come back and watch a little bit later. But welcome back to the Breaking Bread Village. So let me go ahead and bring Antoine on. Hello, how are you?
Hey, hello. I'm doing well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm glad that you were able to come on now, and we're just going to kind of have a part two and just talk. I'm
All
up
right,
all night,
cool.
so this is fine with me, and because I really want people to know about your work and what you do. So, um, again, let me just go ahead. I want to put up your website there so people can check it out. And I just want you to kind of talk about your brand and what you do because I really find it fascinating, the series that you have and things of that nature. So, um, whenever you're ready, you can kind of talk about it. If you need a minute, no problem.
No, like what do you want to know first?
So I want you to just tell everybody kind of what you do, like your work, because when I saw the pictures and I saw the advertisement, I'm like, oh my God, that is so cool. And I love the imagery because of course we're talking about representation, right? And it's really important to me. And we talked a little bit about that earlier in the other segment about representation and voice and why it's so important for children to see people in books and different articles that look like them, why it's important for us to see ourselves and things, as far as, as an inspiration, as a motivation. So kind of tell me, kind of first tell us what you do, because I want people to
Oh
know
yeah,
about your
yeah.
books and stuff. So tell me a little bit about that.
So I am an author and publisher. Oh, real quick, I don't know if I'm reflecting in your audio because I hear my voice coming back off of your speakers. I don't know if that's getting feedback or not.
Oh no, I don't hear an echo at all.
Okay, cool,
So
cool, cool, cool.
okay. So I hope that
Sweet.
doesn't bother you on your end.
No, I'm good. I just thought I heard a reflection.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm a author first, as of 3 years ago. 3 years ago, and then I'm a publisher as of last year. I do where my main brand is Pan African fiction. So mostly so far that's been fantasy, but as of just last week, we came out with a children's book called Knucklehead Fred, which is a contemporary piece, non-fantasy children's book about a kid named Knucklehead Fred, and about like how to discipline children in a healthy way,
Okay.
and what it is to be like a black kid growing up versus what we usually get. So that is like that's like the huge umbrella for what I do. It's called Bandele Books, which is my last name, which also is from Yoruba, which means follow me home, which is a West African Nigerian. So that all kind of encapsulates everything that I do.
Sure, sure. Okay, so so I want to talk about the pirate books that you have. I want to kind of
Yes.
talk
That
about.
one's coming out in 3 days.
Yeah, so tell us about that. Tell us.
So that one was fun, and mostly because the first one I did, which was called the Kishi, that came out 2 years ago. Whenever I would present it to someone, I would say, "Oh yeah, I'm making this book about the Kishi," and people were like, "What is the Kishi?" I'm like, "That's part of the reason why I'm writing about the Kishi, because most people don't know about African myth." And that one's a very famous myth coming from Angola, which is like Southwest Africa, and it's one of the reason why it's so prevalent here in the States is because that was one of the countries that was most affected by the transatlantic slave route. So mythology like that, the Orishas from West Africa, those all came over, and that was the catalyst. And now the second book that I'm doing is in that same world, but it's about pirates, and specifically it's about a female pirate, because the first book was male dominant in that it's a male mythology. It's about like guys who are really attractive, and they have hyenas on the back of their heads, and if you get close to them or trust them too much, they get you. But then the
Hmm.
next one, it's about a woman who is trying to save her husband from this empire that has taken him, and about her journey without having, particularly not having any magic, because the world has magic. She doesn't have any. She can't, throw fire from her hands. She can't see into the future. She's not very strong herself. She can't just sword fight with anybody.
Right.
But she does have wit, and she is a very intelligent woman, very good at coming up with plans. So seeing how she's able to do that and take on this huge empire who have the first airship ever to exist in this world, and seeing how she, goes about doing that.
Awesome. Also, so tell me your inspiration behind that. What made you want to? I mean, just even kind of telling the stories of Pan African myths and just kind of having that as a lot of the imagery. What was your motivation in regards to that?
The motivation is simply, I like to say, it's pretty selfish, because it really was just that I wanted to read those stories, and didn't really see them. So it really was more of an idea of like not sitting on my hands and just waiting for, I'll just wait for someone to create that in a few years or something, or just wait until someone decides to make those kinds of things. And I was like, well, Antoine, why don't you do it? Because throughout my life, this writing thing has always sort of popped up, whether it was when I was
Sure.
a kid and my mother encouraged me and my brother to be creative and make stories, or if it was in high school and having like teachers who were telling me that I should be writing. When I went out of high school and I was in college, I had this program called Inner City Filmmakers. I won their screenplay award, and all these
Oh
times,
wow.
like I was in a community, not community college, university, and I had this a screenplay uh, class, and I was one of the better students. One of the teachers was really encouraged by my writing, but still
Sure.
I didn't really consider it, because I was just like, no, I want to like direct, or I'm gonna do this filming, but not actually thinking about like the writing aspect of it,
Sure.
until up to 3 years ago, where I was like, okay, let me, and this stemming from the fact that I wanted to read a story like this, and instead of waiting for someone, doing it myself. And that is like the catalyst for all of this right now.
No, I think that's amazing. That says so much in regards to actually what we were talking about earlier in regards to creating your own table. A lot of times people say, why don't you give me a seat at your table? I want to see at your table, And sometimes, as in what you did, you kind of created your own table and decided, since this is what I want to see, this is what I want to read about, you created yourself. So I think that's amazing. And it says a lot. So tell me a little bit more about your background, with the Follow Me Home. Tell me a little bit more about what your connection to the whole African, tell me a little bit more about that, in regards to your last name and things of that nature.
That one's insane, because Antoine Bandele is not my birth name. I was not born as Antoine Bandele. I was born as Antoine Bailey. And then when I was 7, my dad had done, like research about like, the family line and history or whatever. And he initially, it's funny, this is a big story, because initially he thought that Bailey was a slave name because it was an Irish name. But it turns out, when I've done ancestry, like bloodline stuff, it turns out that the Irish part of us actually came post Civil War. So it probably happened through marriage or something like that. And it was the French and German part of our bloodline that was during the time of the transatlantic slaves. So it's like, oh, it was French and German. That's where the bring over came from. It wasn't the Irish part. But still, the idea behind it is that he wanted us to have a last name that tied to the homeland.
Okay.
And he did it just by going into like, I think like some West African book, and just like picked the one that he liked the best. And he liked the way that Bandele was, because initially he thought it meant born away from home, which actually is a sort of a mistranslation when you go from Bamidele, which is the Yoruba term for follow me home, and Bandele, which kind of like, mixes it up a little bit. And that just happens
Right.
with languages.
Right.
And so the mistranslation was born away from home. But I still enjoy that, because, it was true. And then still knowing that it's actually follow me home, I thought was awesome for the idea of the books, because it's kind of
Yeah.
like, my main audience right now is going to be African Americans versus it being, Africans. So the
Mhm.
idea of, presenting these stories as like, hey guys, follow me back home
Follow
so
me.
we can learn
Yeah.
about our stories and where we come from. And that I specifically, in my fantasy story with the Kishi and the Sky Pirate stuff, that is based on pre-colonial African mythology and history and that kind of thing, not post-colonial, which is when people kind of assume Black history kind of starts when that's not the case at all.
Right. Exactly. That's a whole nother conversation for sure. So I just wanted to ask you, as I asked, the other guests, representation, our voice. Why do you think it's so important? Why do you think it's, even like within your work, you have a lot of people of color, that are within your work, the imagery, the visuals. Why do you think that's so important?
I'll tell you, and this happened just a few days ago. So like I told you, the children's book that just come out, there was someone who put an Instagram story saying that, oh, my children loved it so much. My daughter read it to her little brother, and she says she loves it so much because the boy looks like, to her little brother. And that just, and some people don't realize how much that matters. I don't know if you remember that study that was done about the white doll, black doll.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah.
Which is incredible because kids are so impressionable. I see sometimes adults saying like, it shouldn't matter, like, what the representation is. You guys should just be okay because, you're human. You should be stronger than that. What people say and what people look like. And it's like, nah, man, like, it's not just about adults. It's about people who are coming up and seeing this imagery. And if they're constantly seeing white people all the time, that stuff messes with your brain as you get developed. And seeing people, that's why I love things like Black Panther and Children of Blood and Bone, which is about to come out. Like, I think that's going to do a lot for representation and the empowerment of young Black people.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And that's one thing that I constantly talk about, is that imagery and visuals representation is so important, especially for our young people. When everything around you within the books, in magazines, on the billboards, on advertisements, on commercials, everything, automatically is most times Caucasian. That's typically the imagery. And I was telling them earlier that even when, like, I click in an image for it, because I do a lot of different stuff, and when I need pictures and things of that nature, I click in, a crying baby or a woman walking, it's always white pictures, always. You very rarely see a Black picture come up when you just put in a very neutral term, right? So I have to, like, purposely put in Black woman walking or Black baby crying. And then even with that, sometimes the images are limited, and sometimes kind of like a negative vibe as opposed to positive. And it's just so interesting. I put in something the other day, and I scrolled down pages and pages and pages of pictures, and it was all white. So, imagery is important, and for you to feel empowered, kind of inspired and feel connected, just like you stated with, the person that did the review for your book, when they saw that, oh, this boy looks like my little brother, she felt connected to it. And that's what's so important. And I think that's the part that people miss, especially in the masses. When you have this conversation, they say it doesn't matter, to your point that you stated earlier, but it's because they've always been represented. So they don't understand not seeing anybody that looks like them. You get what I'm saying? So they can't really connect to that. So, yeah. So, yeah.
I feel you on that. I feel you totally.
Yeah. It's hard to have that conversation because, again, it goes back to the idea that if a person doesn't get it, they can't connect with what you're saying. It's like nothing clicks. You get what I'm saying? So I appreciate the fact that you are doing this and having this, and also the fact that you could be an inspiration to young people, older people, whoever, who have a dream to do something, because like you said, you wanted to see something and you made sure you did it. You get what I'm saying? You made sure to you have Zachary here say he loves your book. So yeah, so I think that's so important to go ahead and create those tables. So your book that's coming out now, it looks really good. I really want people to go out and really support that. So what other series are you working on, or do you want to work on?
It's something that actually, one of the reasons why I was late to today's broadcast is because I was working on my next one, which is a young adult series. And also, just real quick, shout out to Zachary. Thank you for coming in. I just want to make sure that you get the shout out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm doing a young adult series right now, which is so the stuff that I'm doing now is kind of what I consider my adult series, which is the fantasy that is the pre-colonial stuff. And I also wanted to do a contemporary piece that's kind of targeted to Percy Jackson. I don't know if you're familiar with Percy
Oh,
Jackson,
sure.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Greek gods, stuff like that. But I
Yeah.
wanted to do
Yeah.
that, but for a black kid, for someone who has a bloodline from Africa. So the one I'm
Oh,
doing,
that's really cool. Okay, yeah, because I saw that
yeah.
they did a movie about that some years ago about Percy Jackson and was it like the
Oh,
sword?
the lightning thief, but then that didn't really. I think they did a second movie too, but that didn't work out. But they're getting a second chance on Disney Plus, and they're going to be coming out on the new Disney app for a new
Oh,
series that they're doing.
okay,
So
cool.
I'm doing basically my target is going to be those kinds of readers, those kinds of viewers, and then I'm making something called TJ Young and the Orisha. The first book is called The Gatekeeper Staff, in which case it's very similar to Percy Jackson in that it's a child who enters into this world of this god pantheon, similar to Greek mythology, except it's West African. For those of you who are familiar with the Orisha, you'll know people like or entities like Yamaya, Shango, and then Olokun. There's a bunch of them. There's like
Yeah,
literally like hundreds of them. You've
yeah,
seen them
yeah.
sometimes in some media. Like if you watched Static Shock back in the 90s, early 2000s, Shango shows up as like the god of thunder, and that's Shango's very similar to Thor in that regard in Norse
Yeah,
mythology.
yeah, okay, sure.
So I'm doing that, but for a contemporary piece. So it takes place in today versus my other stuff, which is more, ancient and, old school. TJ is a kid who could have been me. Same with all the other kids that are there. And it's about him learning about himself magically, but then also learning about, his roots and the Orisha in an overall sense. And that's what I'm working on literally right now. Like I'm 4 chapters away from being done with the complete first
Oh,
draft.
awesome.
I'm that close.
Okay, okay. So when you said he could have been you, do you kind of do you kind of when you create these characters, is it because of things that you went through or that you imagined as a child? Like, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that mantra, write what you know, and you'll get the best writing from that. And I do agree with that. Some people sometimes hear that and they're like, write what you know, like you mean like I can't write about like fantasy stuff or like what magic is like. No, not necessarily that, but just more of like what is your core values, that sort of a thing. What worldview do you have? And usually you should write from a character's perspective that most aligns with that, no matter what
Okay,
world they're in. Like it doesn't matter
okay,
if it's magical or not. And that's why I feel like sometimes fiction for an author that looks like me sometimes gets segmented into one type of thing,
yeah,
and not really fantasy all the time. Like we're not accepted as like being magical. One of my friends, Stephen Underwood, another author, wrote a whole piece on a tour about why can't I be magical as like a young black male. And that's the thing that I'm trying to also, kind of combat a little bit too, is that, black boys can be magical as well. And just the fact that TJ isn't exactly like me, of course, like no character is going to be 100% like you, but like a lot
sure.
of things that he references, I'm like, it's really fun to write as him and in a modern sense, because it's so closely aligned with my own voice, my own personal voice. So like things that he's interested in, I'm like, oh yeah, I'd be interested in that too. The kinds of people he interacts with and the way he speaks and that sort of thing. I'm like, oh yeah, he's basically a little bit me. And that's why it's so fun to write that series in particular. And that's what I'm really, really looking forward to that one next year.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Well, that's so cool. Well, I mean, as I listen to you in regards to having that voice and having the right representation even of yourself, do you feel like do you feel like we've been kind of muted in regards to in this genre, in this field? I know you talked earlier about how people don't see us in that light, or it didn't seem like it was kind of normal to write, a little black boy or a black girl as a pirate. Do you feel like we've been silenced in this field or this genre of writing?
Silenced in the sense that, in the traditional sense, because this stuff has been happening in the indie sphere like
Sure.
all the time. Like Unique Studios was pretty big with their series. They also had a oh, what is it? Niobe, which is actually just got picked up by HBO. Like there's a lot of indie space works like this that have always been, but it's just traditional publishing and traditional houses typically take only one kind of Black fiction, and it usually has to deal with some sort of trauma, or it's something like I was saying with the colonial period, or
Yeah,
with slavery. And that was a big thing for me too when I was starting writing, is that I mean, that's been represented brilliantly in the past in terms of like slaves, stuff like that. Roots is great. Like we've had that, and we've had that movie over and over
and
and
over again.
over. And that seems
Yes,
to be the only thing that's awarded. Like you see with sometimes with Black actors, the only times they get like these awards is if they're, playing the mammy character, or if they're playing like the slave character, or they're playing like the drug dealer,
the drug
like
dealer. Yes, that's always a big one. Yeah,
right. So I was like, well, we're not all like that. And me being, obviously, I think you can tell right now, I'm a nerdy kind of dude, and I'm not the type of Black person who's necessarily represented in media.
sure.
You only could be one kind of Black person, and then we're not a monolith. We're multifaceted as a people.
Yes,
So that's a big thing too. Me showing off that, and if you do show that in a big sphere of Black fiction, you'll start
yeah.
seeing that there's nuances between us. We're not just this one. There's not just one person representing all of us.
Yes, yes. No, I'm really happy that you talked about that, because that's why it's so important to get out these different type of works, because we have been kind of put into a box in regards to and taught what's acceptable to be shown, and what's acceptable to be celebrated. Because yes, if it was like a drug dealer, or because I'm so over slavery movies, like I get it.
I am too.
Like, and I hate the fact that I really despise it, and that's a strong word, but I really despise the fact that a lot of people really believe that that's where we started, and don't really have the true stories in regards to the kings and queens that we were, and business owners, and just running our own spaces in this world. A lot of times people think that it just kind of started with slavery, like we just appeared as slaves. And so I really appreciate people who put out different narratives and show more positive imagery of us, so that our kids, of course, can know as well that there can be different things. And there's a lot of young boys that are quote unquote nerdy, and that are
right. No, very much so.
Yeah, and people need to be celebrated, and a lot of times that's kind of looked down upon, in some circles. Like, I mean, have you ever got the thing where that you had to kind of prove Blackness? Have you ever?
No, all the time, the time. All the time. That's why I love people. I really identify with like Donald Glover and a little bit Tyler the Creator, because they're kind of like offbeat, or Jaden Smith. I love that they are out there and showing that Blackness isn't one thing, and it never has been. It's just that it's been so insular in terms of the media outlet and stuff like that. But yeah, it's always been like that growing up, always.
Yeah, where you didn't talk Black enough, or you weren't Black enough, or why do you talk white, or where you have to almost justify your Blackness, and that's too bad. So I'm happy that you have this type of outlet for your creativity, and also to allow other young boys and girls, who are a little different, and not going, down the same beaten path. So I appreciate that. So in regards to your work, do you feel like it has been, because I saw Zachary on here, kind of, do you feel like it's been embraced by different communities?
Oh no, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. One of my mega fans, like the guy who comes in and reads like my drafts before they go out to the public, beta drafts, because I have a beta reader team, stuff like that, critique partners.
Sure.
One of my, and I didn't know what he looked like for the longest time, because when you're online, you don't really know. And then like I think I sent him the Sky Pirate book, and then I was like, oh yeah, everybody who I'm sending it out to, like take a picture or whatever. And then the person who sent it back was like a white guy, and then I come to know later that he is from the South. You know what I mean? Like he's a white dude from the South who adores this series and is always like literally, like I think 2 weeks ago, because we're on a hiatus right now in terms of me like writing a new story. He's like,
okay,
hey, like, do you have another one? Like, what's going on? Like, can I still beta read? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just like writing right now. Like, but he is such a mega fan, and it's so awesome that he is from the American South, where we know, most times there's a lot of tension between that kind of stuff. And it's just great to see that, and he's a younger guy too. So it's great to see that, a younger generation potentially will, embrace all this stuff and lovingly.
Awesome. Well, I think that's amazing. I'm really proud of your work, and I'm proud of the fact that you decided to create. I mean, I can say that 1,000 times, and it won't be enough, because I'm such a big advocate for people creating their own space. A lot of times we feel like we're not accepted in different spaces, and we have to do so much to kind of change ourselves to be.
Oh my God, he's actually in the chat right now. He's in the chat right now. He's the feline. If I'm assuming that right, because that's a different username, but I'm pretty sure that's him.
Yeah. I know you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's funny. Oh, that's cool. I'm glad that they're watching. Yeah, I'm just really proud of this. I really want people to go out, get your book, support your work, because it's important. I think that, especially for, and not only for young Black boys and girls, but it's also important for, like you said, like even with the gentleman from down south, it's good for, white children to see different imagery as well, because then they're able to kind of connect better with people that don't look like them,
and also seeing that it's normal. Like if you see all these works where people are different and they're also similar, like if you see human plight is going to be the same no matter what skin tone, or if they're an alien, or if they're from some fantasy world. There's always going to be that through line, and as long as they understand that at the end of the day we're all human, I think that goes a super long way for all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and to allow us to all be able to connect. Well, I appreciate you for jumping on with me real quick. Did you have anything else to add about your work or about your mission and or anything, or any new things or anything?
I think we covered it pretty well. Like I said before, the thing that's coming out most recently, or is coming out in 3 days, is it's called By Sea and Sky, the Sky Pirate Chronicles. That one's the Sky Pirate book. And then next year, the big work that I have that I'm working on right now is called T.J. Young and the Orisha, the Gatekeeper Staff. That's coming out Juneteenth next year.
That sounds so cool. That just sounds that's really exciting. So
I'm so excited for that one.
No, I know. You seem like I can see your energy right now when you talk about it. So no, I appreciate you for coming on and sharing that. And I really encourage everybody to go to his website. Look at his work. It's breathtaking. It's outstanding. And, your whole team that works on this with you, it just looks like a really good work. So I am going to get one myself so I can read it, so I can put my money where my mouth is, and support you as well. So
hey, and that's going on right now for all. I think we're doing it's a blackout week. I think from June 14th to the 20th. The idea is, hey, if you can buy 2 works from Black authors only this week. So yeah, we're totally in it right now. So that can be one of 2, and I can recommend another one to you too if you need me to.
Oh, please do. Yeah, recommend it right now. Put that shout out.
Have you heard of Children of Blood and Bone from Tomi Adeyemi?
I have heard of it. Okay, so I need to just be really transparent. I am not a fiction
fantasy reader. Oh, you're not a fiction reader. Oh,
no, fiction, fantasy, none of that. Because I don't know. I've never been, but I am going to purchase your book, and I'm going to. Out of my comfort zone. I don't know. I've always liked real, and when I say real, people's life stories and them kind of overcoming something and being victorious. I've always read biographies and autobiographies that way, or some type of research type book. I'm kind of nerdy that way. But I'm going to get your book, and I'm going to support that.
Well, you got Michelle Obama Becoming. That's a good one too. You should do that one as well.
No, keep recommending all of them so that we can
for sure.
So we can support different authors, because we need to, and I think that's important. And I'm looking for because we're kind of trying to do a collaboration with the schools here where I live, where with another lady that's a librarian, where we bring in some more books with Black faces, because they don't have that imagery. So to me, when you talk about empowering or like, uplifting, inspiring young people, especially in different demographics, they have to see people that look like them to aspire to be something greater than themselves at that moment. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we are trying to work on that, or we are working on that in regards to having more of that literature accessible to them so they can see it and say, oh, wow, she did this, I can too, or he did this, I can too. And also, like I said, with, children that are not, children of color, they can also see, people of color in these positive lights as opposed to what we talked about earlier, just the, slavery and, drug dealer, and because that's what shapes their mindsets in regards to the people when they actually see them in real life. You get what I'm saying?
Right, for sure.
Let's see, Zachary. I love it. I love this. Let
Black
me see.
Mage from Daniel Barnes and DJ Kirkland. That's another one.
Okay.
If you're into fantasy graphic novels, we're just trying to find you a good nonfiction work.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy two. And like I said, I really do not. So thank you, Zachary, for that. I do not buy a lot of that, but I'm going to, because I don't know, when I saw yours about the pirate in the sea, I thought that was really cool. And it seems really sweet. So I'm like, this is something that I want to feel.
Well, if you want something sweet, Knucklehead Fred is the one I would recommend. I don't know if you have children or you have maybe a niece or nephew. That'd be a dope one. I do
have 4 boys, but I do have I do have a son that's 12 that I could probably, because he really is really big into reading. He loves reading and loves fantasy.
Wait.
So I get that for him.
I mean, this might be an off-broadcast thing, but can I get your info? Because I am trying to get younger readers to read the TJ book once it's ready for betas. I would love it if you could read it.
Oh, sure.
I'm trying to get a younger perspective as well.
No, I think that would be really cool because he's really into because he used to read a lot of fantasy stuff. He's really into all of that. I mean, he would be like sci-fi. So I would love to get that for him. And I can get that to you. And then that way he can read it and give me some feedback, give you some feedback. Really cool. Yeah.
That would be amazing. Okay. Awesome.
Sure. Well, look at that. There we go.
Look at that.
Do it. That's how you do it. No, I appreciate it. So, and thank you. I want to thank Zachary, my co-host. He's been my thank you too for coming on. But Antoine, I appreciate you so much for coming on and talking about this because it's so important. And it's really, it's inspired me and it's really uplifting for me to see a young Black, author that is taking this direction in this genre, because you don't see it a lot. So this is really cool. So I appreciate you so much for taking the time, and I'm sorry you couldn't come on earlier, but I'm very happy. No, it's okay. Everything happens for a reason. So I don't know on that. So I appreciate you for coming on now.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I would love to be on again, and definitely we're going to reach out and we're going to talk about the books for sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I know he would love it. He would love to get a book, and I would, let him know, this is just for you. You get to read. Look at this. And he would love that. So, let's see, Blind Wave.
Oh, awesome! Blind Wave. That's another YouTube channel. Because I'm also a YouTuber as well, so I'm in that sphere as well. That's another YouTube channel that I frequent.
Oh, awesome. Well, you're welcome, Blind Wave. Thanks so much for watching. It's been great having Antoine on and Zachary. So thanks so much again. I appreciate it, and I would love to have you back on. Especially when you have some more work coming out or working on some more things, to come on and kind of tell people about it, because a lot of times people just don't know what's out there. I know for me, I would have never.
First battle, just letting people know it exists. Yeah.
Exactly. So, having these conversations is why I love this, and I'm so passionate about talking with people, because you learn so much about what they're doing and how you can support them. So, and we want to support you. So, again, I'm going to put your information up. If you guys want to find out more about Antoine, please go to his website, look at his books that he has right now and some things that he has coming up. And you do other things too. You don't just write books. You do other things. Tell us that real quick, and I'll let me know a little bit more about what you do in regards to, because there's other services that people can
Right. Oh, so if you are an indie author or if you're writing books in general, I do have a audiobook services. So if you have an audiobook you want to have done, I have a cast of narrators that I can use who are LA locals, and they come to my booth. So if you need that, authors out there, I have that as well. I am also, as I mentioned before, a YouTuber. My YouTube space is, again, mostly geek related. I talk about things like Star Wars or Avatar: The Last Airbender, A Legend of Korra, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, like all that stuff. So you also can check that out as well. But yeah, I'm doing quite a lot. And I'm an editor on the side as well. I do video editing for other channels as well.
Oh, okay. You know, see, I watch all of that. I watch those. I just don't read the book. So I'm that person that when people say, oh, it's a book too, it's like, oh, okay. And just keep doing what you're doing. Again, thank you for coming into this space to have this conversation with me, to get the word out. And I encourage people to support this. You know, and again, if you're like me and you may not be necessarily, you know, a fantasy reader, you know, like you said, if you have children, nieces and nephews, a grandchild, or even, you know, for yourself, if you want to, you know, support this, please do. We really encourage it. So again, Antoine, thank you. I wish you well. Great evening. And we will talk about that. I would like to get the book for him to be able to read and kind of give us some feedback. That would be really interesting. So
yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me on. I'll see you later. Peace and blessings.
All right. To you too. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. Well, again, I just want to thank Antoine for coming on. I'm so happy that he was able to, you know, take the time to be here with us today. And, you know, I appreciate you guys for tuning in too for a second part of representation and voice. It was so good, so important for us to see ourselves, or whoever you are, to see who, you know, who represents you. It definitely is empowering, and it definitely is something that gives you something to aspire to. So again, thanks Antoine for coming on, and thank you guys for watching another episode of the Breaking Bread Village. Thank you so much.